Welcome to tonight's story. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and let yourself relax. Tonight, we travel back in time to a mysterious civilization deep in the jungles of Central America. The story of the Maya. Let's begin. The Maya civilization began long before the Aztecs, more than 2,000 years before, in the land we now call southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and parts of El Salvador. The jungle was thick. The trees reached up to the sky. It rained often. The air was heavy and humid. And yet, in this place, a great civilization was born. The Maya cleared the jungle. They cut down trees. They made fields. They planted corn. They grew beans and squash alongside it. Growing 3 crops together was wise. The corn grew tall. The beans climbed up the corn stalks. The squash spread along the ground. It kept the weeds away. Corn was everything to the Maya. It appeared in their myths. They believed the gods made humans out of corn dough. Around 2000 BC, small villages began to appear. At first they were tiny, just a few huts. But over time they grew. By 1000 BC, large buildings began to rise. Stone temples appeared for the first time. El Mirador was one such city, deep in the jungle of northern Guatemala. They built enormous pyramids there. The La Danta Pyramid was over 70 meters tall. By volume, it was one of the largest pyramids in the world, built thousands of years ago. That is remarkable. But El Mirador was abandoned around 150 AD. No one knows exactly why. It may have been environmental problems, or perhaps war. The Maya were not one empire. They were dozens of city-states. Each had its own king. Each built its own temples. These cities competed with one another. Sometimes they formed alliances. Sometimes they went to war. The politics were complex and tangled. From around 250 AD, the classic period began. This was the golden age of Maya civilization. Cities flourished across the region. Tikal was one of the most powerful cities, located in the Petén region of northern Guatemala, a massive city built in the heart of the jungle. More than 100,000 people lived there. Thousands of buildings filled the city. Giant pyramids rose above the trees. The tallest was Temple 4, 65 meters high. That is the height of a 21-story building. From the top, you could see for miles. The jungle stretched out like a green ocean. Other pyramids rose like islands in the distance. It must have been breathtaking. The kings of Tikal were powerful. One of the most famous was Yaxnuk Ajin I. He took the throne around 350 AD. He expanded Tikal greatly. He conquered surrounding cities. He even established relations with Teotihuacan far to the north. Teotihuacan was a great city in central Mexico. It lay outside Maya territory, but its influence was vast. Buildings in the Teotihuacan style appeared in Tikal, evidence of active trade. Long-distance commerce was alive and thriving. Calakmul was Tikal's great rival. Located in the Campeche region of Mexico, another powerful city-state, the two cities competed for over a century. By the 500s AD, Calakmul had gained the upper hand. In 562 AD, Calakmul attacked Tikal. They captured the king of Tikal, a great victory. Tikal fell into decline for over a century. No new buildings were constructed. No new monuments were raised. But around 650 AD, a king named Hasao Chankawil I rose to power. He brought Tikal back from the edge. He challenged Calakmul once again. In 695 AD, he finally defeated them. Tikal was reborn. Palenque was another important city, located in the state of Chiapas, Mexico, a beautiful city built along a hillside. The most famous king was Tikal the Great. Born in 615 AD, he became king at the age of 12. He ruled for over 80 years, the longest reign in Maya history. Under his rule, Palenque reached its peak. He built magnificent palaces, decorated with intricate carvings. He raised grand temples across the city. The Temple of the Inscriptions is especially famous. Tikal's tomb lies deep within it. It was discovered in 1952, deep inside the pyramid. Down a stone staircase, a hidden chamber was found. A great stone sarcophagus sat in the darkness. A massive lid covered it. The lid was carved with an extraordinary scene. Pakal was shown beneath the world tree, descending into the underworld. It revealed how the Maya understood the cosmos. When the lid was opened, a stunning sight lay beneath. Pakal's remains were covered in jade. He wore a jade mask, jade earrings, and a necklace. Jade rings. Hundreds of jade beads covered his body. Jade was the most precious thing to the Maya, more valuable than gold. It symbolized eternal life. Copan was located in western Honduras. It was known as a city of learning. It had more inscriptions than almost anywhere else. The hieroglyphic stairway is remarkable. More than 2,000 glyphs were carved into the steps of a temple, the longest inscription in all of Maya history. It recorded the history of the Copan dynasty, the achievements of its kings, wars and rituals, all carved in stone to last forever. A king called 18 Rabbit was especially famous. He ruled in the early 700s AD. He was a great patron of art and scholarship. Beautiful stelae were erected in his honor. The king was carved in stunning detail. Elaborate clothing and feathered headdresses, faces captured with remarkable expression. But his story ended tragically. In 738 AD, he was captured by a neighboring city called Quirigua. He was executed. For a king to be taken prisoner was a great shame. Copan began to decline after that. War among the Maya was unique. The goal was not total conquest. What mattered most was taking prisoners, especially the king or nobles of the enemy. They would be offered as sacrifices to the gods. War rituals were elaborate. They consulted the stars to choose the right day. The position of Venus was particularly important. When Venus rose as the morning star, it was considered a good day to begin a campaign. Venus was regarded as the star of war. Warriors dressed themselves magnificently. They wore jaguar skins. They adorned themselves with feathers. They carried obsidian blades and spears. Shields were made from wood and leather. After a battle was won, prisoners were brought back to the city. A ceremony was held in the central plaza. The king himself took part. The prisoners' fingernails were torn out. Blood was drawn from their bodies. Suffering was part of the ritual. In the end, their heads were cut off, or their hearts were removed. Much like the Aztecs, the Maya practiced human sacrifice, but the scale was smaller. Not nearly as many as the Aztecs. It was more selective. The ball game was also a religious ritual. It was not simply a sport. It was a reenactment of the order of the universe. The court had a special shape. Like the letter H, sloped walls rose on either side. In the middle of each wall, a stone ring was mounted. The goal was to pass the ball through the ring. The ball was made of rubber. It was heavy. It could weigh several kilograms. Players could not use their hands, only their hips, their shoulders, their knees. It was an incredibly difficult game. Injuries were common. Sometimes players died after the game. A sacrifice ceremony followed. Some say the captain of the losing team was offered to the gods. Others say it was the winning team. Perhaps it was considered an honor to be given to the gods. The truth remains uncertain. The Maya developed a writing system, the most advanced in all of the Americas. A fully developed script. The glyphs looked like pictures, but they were not simple drawings. They could also represent sounds. A single glyph could carry multiple meanings. The reader had to understand the context. It was an extraordinarily complex system. They recorded their histories in books called codices, made from bark paper, folded like a screen, opened panel by panel. They wrote down their history, the lineages of kings, alliances and wars, ceremonies and offerings. They also recorded astronomical observations, the movements of Venus, solar and lunar eclipses, the positions of the planets. They created calendars. Several calendars were used at the same time. The first was the Tzolk'in, a sacred calendar of 260 days. It was used to determine the dates of rituals. The second was the Hab, a solar calendar of 365 days. It was used to plan the agricultural year. The two calendars worked together. Every 52 years, they aligned on the same day. And then there was the long count, a calendar designed to measure vast stretches of time. They chose a starting point, August 11th, 3114 BC. The date held deep mythological significance. From that point, they counted forward, calculating thousands of years with precision. They used a base 20 number system. Numbers were written with dots and bars. 1 dot meant 1. 1 bar meant 5. Combined, they could represent up to 19. And they invented 0, drawn in the shape of a shell. The Maya were among the first civilizations in the world to use the concept of 0. Their astronomy was extraordinary. They observed the stars with the naked eye. No telescopes. Yet their calculations were remarkably accurate. They determined the cycle of Venus, 484 days, almost exactly what modern science calculates today. They tracked the movements of the moon with precision. They could predict lunar eclipses. The caracol at Chichen Itza is a famous example. It was an astronomical observatory, built in the shape of a round tower. Its windows faced specific directions, toward where the sun set on the spring and autumn equinoxes, toward where Venus rose. They watched, they recorded, and from those records, they built their calendars. Why were they so obsessed with time? The Maya believed that time moved in cycles, that the past would repeat itself. If you understood the past, you could predict the future. Kings held ceremonies on the same dates as their ancestors, performing the same rituals on the same days. They believed this would pass down the authority of those who came before. Art flourished during this era. Sculpture was extraordinarily detailed. Kings were carved into stone monuments. Facial expressions were captured with remarkable skill. The folds of clothing, the fine details of jewelry, everything looked alive. They painted murals on the walls. The murals at Bonampak are especially famous. Vivid battle scenes were painted with stunning realism. Warriors locked in combat, prisoners being dragged away, rituals being performed, all captured on the walls. The colors were vibrant, reds and blues, yellows and greens. Even after 1,300 years, they still shine. Pottery was beautiful as well. Intricate scenes were painted on ceramic vessels. Mythological moments, royal banquets, everyday life. Cylindrical vessels were especially prized. Scenes wrapped all the way around, as if a story was unfolding before your eyes. Jade carving was masterful. Jade was shaped and polished into masks and earrings. Jade is incredibly hard, with no metal tools, using only stone implements. Creating such fine work is extraordinary. Music was important too. Every ritual was accompanied by music. They crafted instruments and played them with care. They beat drums, carved from wood. The sound was deep and resonant. They played flutes, made from fired clay, shaped like birds, or like people. They blew conch shells. The sound rang out like a trumpet. It announced the beginning of ceremonies. Dance was equally important. People gathered in the plaza to dance. It was an offering to the gods. They wore masks as they danced. They became gods, animals. They brought myths to life. Sometimes they danced through the entire night, lost in a kind of trance. They believed they became one with the divine. Maya society was divided into ranks. At the very top stood the king. He was called the Ahau. The king was a sacred being. He stood between the gods and the people. Bloodline mattered above all. The throne usually passed from father to son. But sometimes there were queens. Queens in Calakmul, queens in Palenque. They wielded real power. Below the king were the nobles. They owned land. They led armies into battle. Priests held great importance as well. They conducted rituals. They maintained the calendars. Scribes were a separate class. People who could read and write. They were deeply respected. The common people were farmers. They grew corn and beans. They paid taxes to the nobles. They worked for the ruling class, building temples, constructing palaces. There were also slaves, war prisoners, or people who had fallen into debt. Food culture was rich. Corn was the staple. It was prepared much like tortillas. They made tamales, corn dough filled with meat, wrapped in corn husks and steamed. They drank chocolate. Cacao was ground into a paste, mixed with water and frothed. Sometimes chili peppers were added, sometimes vanilla. It was a drink for nobles. They raised turkeys for meat. They hunted deer. They caught fish. They kept bees for honey, a species with no stinger. It was a prized ingredient. Avocados, papayas, tomatoes, squash. A wide variety of fruits and vegetables were eaten. By the late 800s, something strange began to happen. Cities started to fade. New buildings stopped being constructed. No new monuments were raised. The last date carved into stone at Tikal was 889 AD. After that, silence. By around 920 AD, most of the southern cities had been abandoned. People had left. The jungle crept back in. Trees covered the palaces. Roots cracked the stones apart. For over 1,000 years, these cities were forgotten, hidden beneath the jungle canopy. No one knew they were there. Something strange began to happen around the year 900 AD. Cities that had flourished for centuries, one by one, fell silent. The last monument at Tikal was carved in 889 AD. After that, no more records, no more names of kings, no more accounts of wars. Everything stopped. Copan was the same. In 822 AD, the last king raised a monument. And then, silence. Palenque declined even earlier. By around 800 AD, it was already weakening. No new buildings were constructed. Calakmul, Piedras Negras, Dos Pilas, one after another. The cities were abandoned. People left. They emptied the palaces. They walked away from the temples. Where they went, no one knows. The population plummeted. Regions that once held millions of people were nearly empty. Why did this happen? For over 1,000 years, it was a mystery. Scholars proposed many theories. At first, they thought it was invasion, that someone attacked and destroyed the cities, but there was no evidence. No signs of large-scale warfare, very few traces of fire, no evidence of invaders. Some suggested disease, that a terrible plague swept through and killed everyone. But this theory was also weak. In the late 20th century, scientific research began. Tree rings were analyzed. Sediment from lake beds was studied. A stunning discovery was made. Evidence of prolonged drought. From the late 800s onward, rainfall decreased dramatically, especially around 810 AD, 860 AD, and 9 to 10 AD. Severe droughts occurred. Rivers dried up. Lakes shrank. Water became desperately scarce. The Maya were vulnerable to water shortages. There were very few large rivers. Most of their water came from rain. They built reservoirs to collect water. They stored rainwater to use during the dry season. But when the rains did not come, the reservoirs ran dry. Crops could not be grown. The corn did not grow. Neither did the beans, nor the squash. Everything withered and died. Famine came. Hunger spread across the cities. People starved. The people must have turned their anger toward the king. The king was supposed to communicate with the gods. He was supposed to bring the rain, but the rain did not come. No matter how many rituals were performed, no matter how much blood was offered, the authority of the king crumbled. The people lost their faith. When a king loses his sacred power, the entire system collapses. War intensified. Cities fought over water and food. They attacked weaker cities to steal grain, to capture prisoners. But everyone was weakened. Even the victors suffered heavy losses. A vicious cycle began. War reduced the number of farmers. Crops failed. Famine worsened. Environmental destruction played a role as well. For hundreds of years, too many trees had been cut down. Wood was needed to build. Wood was also needed to make lime. Lime was a construction material. It was used to bind stones together. To produce lime, limestone had to be burned. Massive amounts of wood were required. To build a single pyramid, tens of thousands of trees had to be cut. As the forests disappeared, the soil eroded. When it rained, the soil washed away. The land became barren. Farming grew harder and harder. Yields declined. Meanwhile, the population continued to grow. Throughout the classic period, the population increased. More food was needed. But production did not increase. In fact, it decreased. The environment could no longer sustain them. Society also grew more complex. The number of nobles increased. The number of priests increased. More and more people did not work but still had to be fed. The burden on farmers grew heavier. Taxes increased. Forced labor increased. Palaces grew larger and larger. Kings competed with one another. Who could build the tallest temple? Who could erect the grandest monument? They squeezed everything from the people. To build, to wage war, all the burden fell on the common people. Eventually, the system collapsed. Drought was the trigger, but the root causes ran much deeper. It was unsustainable development. They had exceeded the limits of the environment. Social contradictions had piled up. Already at the breaking point, drought arrived. That was the final blow. Each city fell in its own way. Some collapsed quickly. Others held on longer. Dos Pilas fell early. By around 800 AD, it was already abandoned. War was the cause. After years of conflict, it was finally defeated. The people scattered. Palenque also began to decline in the early 800s. It was attacked by a powerful neighboring city. The king was captured. His authority shattered. The city never recovered. Tikal lasted longer. It held on until around 900 AD. To some degree, it survived. But in the end, it too was abandoned. The royal palace was emptied. The people left. Imagine the last inhabitants. How they must have lived. The palaces were already empty. The king had left or died. The nobles were gone. The remaining people moved into the palaces. They lived in the king's chambers, in the priests' rooms. They lived humbly. They lit fires on the temple steps. They cooked their meals there. Sacred places became kitchens. Between the beautiful monuments, they threw their garbage. They no longer showed respect. They broke into the royal tombs. They took the jade. Survival was urgent. And eventually, they too left. To small villages, into the forest. They scattered. The city stood empty. Only silence remained. Only the wind. The jungle returned. Grass began to grow. It covered the plazas. Trees took root in the palace walls, on the temple steps. Their roots cracked the stones apart. Vines wrapped around the buildings. Moss covered the carvings. Hundreds of years passed. The great pyramids became green hills, covered in trees. From a distance, they looked like natural landforms. No one knew that cities lay hidden beneath. But Maya civilization did not end completely. The southern cities collapsed, but the north was different. The Yucatan Peninsula, the flatlands of eastern Mexico. There, the Maya continued. Chichen Itza became the new center. From around 900 AD onward, it flourished greatly. The architectural style was different. It was not like the southern cities. It showed the influence of the Toltecs. The Toltecs were a people from central Mexico. Their warrior culture was strong. They came to the Yucatan. They mixed with the Maya. A new culture was born. El Castillo at Chichen Itza, a massive pyramid. It has staircases on all four sides. Each side has 91 steps. All four sides together make 364. Add the top platform, 365. The number of days in a year. The pyramid was a calendar. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, something extraordinary happens. When sunlight strikes the steps, shadows form. It looks like a serpent descending the pyramid. The feathered serpent Kukulkan, an important Maya god. Thousands gathered in the plaza. To witness this moment, they believed the god was descending to earth. There is also a temple of the warriors. The columns are covered with carvings of warriors. It shows that war had become more important. There are Chak Mul sculptures, stone figures lying on their backs. with a plate resting on their stomachs. Offerings were placed on the plate. Human hearts, blood, human sacrifice increased. The sacred well is also there, called a cenote, a deep sinkhole filled with water. Offerings were thrown into it. Golden jade. People were thrown in as well. Sacrifices to the rain god. In the early 20th century, the bottom of the well was explored. Countless artifacts were found. Many human bones as well. Uxmal was another important city, south of Chichen Itza. The architecture is beautiful. It is called the Puc style. Intricate stonework decorations. The governor's palace is famous. A long building. The entire wall is covered with geometric patterns. More than 20,000 stone pieces, fitted together one by one. The precision is astonishing. The Pyramid of the Magician is unique. Its corners are rounded. Unlike other pyramids, there is a legend that a dwarf magician built it in a single night. Of course, it is only a legend. Mayapan rose later, from the 1200s onward. It dominated the Yucatan, but it was not as grand as before. The quality of construction declined. Art also regressed. In the early 1500s, Spanish conquistadors appeared in the Caribbean. They conquered Cuba. They took Hispaniola. They wanted more land. They searched for more gold. They sent out expeditions. In 1511, Anton de Alaminos discovered the Yucatan. He sailed along the coast. He saw cities built of stone. He was amazed. These people were different from other natives he had encountered. They wore clothing. Their buildings were magnificent. In 1517, another expedition arrived, led by Francisco Hernández de Córdoba. They landed on the shore. Maya people came out to meet them. At first, they showed curiosity, but soon, they became hostile. The Spanish were arrogant. They demanded gold. A battle broke out. Maya warriors attacked. Stones and arrows rained down. The Spanish fought back with guns and swords, but they were vastly outnumbered. They were pushed back. Córdoba was wounded. Many of his men were injured as well. They fled back to their ships. On the way back to Cuba, Córdoba died from his wounds. The first encounter was a tragedy. In 1519, Cortés landed on the Mexican mainland, but he did not touch the Yucatan. He headed north to conquer the Aztecs. The Maya were granted a brief reprieve. In 1524, after Cortés had defeated the Aztecs, it was the Mayas' turn. Pedro de Alvarado marched south, toward Guatemala. The Quiche Maya lived there. The Quiche were a powerful kingdom. They controlled the highlands. They had tens of thousands of warriors. The king's name was Tacunuman. He was a brave warrior. He chose to fight the Spanish. In February 1524, a great battle took place. Tens of thousands of Quiche warriors surrounded a few hundred Spanish soldiers. Arrows fell like rain. Stones were hurled. Spanish soldiers fell, but horses and guns were devastating. Steel swords shattered obsidian weapons. Tecun entered the fight himself, dressed in brilliant feathered regalia. He charged straight at Alvarado. The two clashed, spear against sword. It was a fierce duel, but Tecun fell, struck down by Alvarado's blade. When the king died, the army collapsed. The Quiche capital of Cumarcaj was taken. The city burned. People were killed. Alvarado was brutal. He burned every village that resisted. He enslaved the survivors. The Cachical Maya initially allied with the Spanish. They were enemies of the Quiche, like the Tlaxcalans with the Aztecs, but they soon regretted it. The Spanish demanded gold. They demanded tribute. In 1526, the Cachical rebelled. They abandoned their city and fled into the mountains. They fought a guerrilla war. They emerged from the forest to attack, then disappeared again. The Spanish struggled. They did not know the jungle terrain. They were ambushed repeatedly. But in the end, they were subdued. In 1530, the Cachical surrendered. The Guatemalan highlands were conquered. The Yucatan held out much longer. The land was flat, but water was scarce. It was difficult to conquer. In 1527, Francisco de Montejo attempted the conquest. He landed on the east coast. Maya tribes resisted. They fought everywhere. They harassed the Spanish forces. Water shortages were severe. Food ran out. Disease spread. Montejo failed. He had to withdraw. The first attempt was defeated. In 1531, Montejo tried again. This time, he came from the west coast. He failed again. Maya resistance was fierce. They knew the terrain well. They excelled at guerrilla warfare. In 1541, Montejo's son made a third attempt. This time, he was more careful. He exploited conflicts between Maya tribes. He allied with one side and attacked the other. In 1542, he founded Mérida, built on the ruins of an old Maya city. He made it his stronghold. By 1546, most of northern Yucatan had been conquered, but it was not complete. Resistance remained in many places. They hid in the mountains and jungles. They continued to fight. Smallpox arrived, just as with the Aztecs. The Maya suffered terribly from disease. They had no immunity. Tens of thousands died. Entire villages disappeared. The survivors were weakened. They had no strength left to fight. Resistance faded. But complete conquest took 150 years. The Petén region, the jungles of northern Guatemala, held out the longest. The Itza Maya maintained their independence. Their capital was called Tikal. It was built on an island in the middle of a lake. The Spanish attacked several times. In 1561, in 1562, every attempt failed. The jungle was their defense. It was hard to find the way. Supply lines were cut. Tikal held out for another 150 years. It remained an independent state. In 1696, the Spanish sent a large army. This time, they prepared thoroughly. They built roads as they advanced. They secured supply lines. Slowly, they surrounded the city. In March 1697, the final battle took place. Tikal fell. The last Maya kingdom collapsed. The conquest was complete. Independence was over, but the people remained. The Maya did not disappear. Even under Spanish rule, they kept their languages. They preserved their traditions. Missionaries arrived. They imposed Catholicism. They banned the old beliefs. One bishop named Diego de Landa was especially zealous. In 1562, he held a great burning ceremony in Mani. He gathered Maya codices, hundreds of books. He burned them all. He destroyed idols. He smashed temples. Thousands of years of records, gone in a single day. Ironically, Landa later recorded Maya culture. He wrote a book called Relación de las Cosas de Yucatán. He described the Maya writing system. He recorded the calendar. He documented their customs. He was both destroyer and recorder. Thanks to his records, we know a little about the Maya. Almost all the codices were lost. Only 4 survived. The Dresden Codex, the Madrid Codex, the Paris Codex, the Grolier Codex. Out of more than 1,000 books, only 4 remain. It was an immense loss. The Maya secretly worshipped the old gods. In mountain caves, hidden from view, they performed ceremonies. They hid Maya gods behind Catholic saints. Outwardly, they bowed to the cross. Inwardly, they remembered the old gods. Dance continued as well. On Catholic feast days, they performed Maya dances. The form had changed, but the spirit endured. Language was strong. They learned Spanish, but at home, they spoke Maya. Parents taught their children, generation after generation. More than 25 Maya languages survived. They kept their clothing as well. Traditional garments called huipils. They continued to wear them. Each region had different patterns, different colors. You could tell where someone was from. Food traditions also continued. Tortillas and tamales. They kept making them. The way they ground corn was the same, exactly as it had been done thousands of years before. The colonial period was harsh. Under the encomienda system, they were forced into labor. On plantations, in mines, they worked without rest. They also had to pay tribute. The population dropped dramatically, Before the conquest, millions of Maya lived in the region. A century later, fewer than 1/10 remained. Disease, forced labor, starvation. They died by the thousands. But they did not vanish completely. In remote villages, in mountain hamlets, the Maya survived. In 1821, Mexico gained independence from Spain. Guatemala also became independent. But for the Maya, little changed. The rulers had changed, but discrimination continued. Their land was taken away. The best land was claimed by white landowners. The Maya became tenant farmers on the land of their ancestors. They paid rent to survive. Rebellions broke out. In 1847, in the Yucatan, the caste war began. Maya peasants rose up. They attacked the white landowners. They tried to reclaim their land. At first, they were successful. They took control of most of the Yucatan Peninsula. But eventually, they were suppressed. They fought for over 50 years, but in 1901, it ended. Tens of thousands died. Villages burned. The Maya were weakened further. In the 20th century, the suffering continued, especially in Guatemala. From the 1960s onward, a civil war began. Government forces and guerrillas fought for 36 years. Maya villages became battlegrounds. The government suspected them. They believed the Maya were helping the guerrillas. Massacres occurred. In the early 1980s, hundreds of villages were burned. Tens of thousands were killed. Most were civilians, Maya people. In 1996, the Civil War ended. A peace agreement was signed. More than 200,000 people had died. 83% of them were Maya indigenous people. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission investigated. They concluded it was genocide. But still, the Maya are alive. More than 6 million of them. They speak Maya languages. Guatemala has the largest population, over 3 million, nearly half the country's population. Mexico also has many. In Chiapas State, in Yucatan State, more than 1 million. In Belize, too. In Honduras, too. Everywhere, Maya people live. More than 25 Maya languages are still spoken. Chichen, Yucatec, Xol, Mam, each one is different. Some languages are spoken by millions, some by only tens of thousands, but all are alive. Schools have been established. Schools that teach in Maya languages. Children learn in their mother tongue. Books are published, written in Maya languages. Newspapers exist as well. Maya languages are on the internet now. Websites, social media. Young people use them. Traditions continue. Chichicastenango, a town in Guatemala. There, Maya priests perform ceremonies. At altars on hilltops, a priest named Pascual Abaj was famous. In the mid-20th century, he revived the old rituals. They burn copal incense. They offer corn. They still use the 260-day calendar. When a baby is born, they visit the priest to learn the child's destiny. Based on the day of birth, when people marry, they hold a ceremony. They ask permission from the ancestors. When planting begins, they make offerings to the earth god, to the rain god. They still wear traditional clothing, colorful haipils, woven by hand, embroidered by hand. It takes months to make a single garment, but they make them with care. The patterns have meaning. They symbolize the cosmos. They represent the gods. Wearing them is itself a prayer. Food is still prepared the traditional way. Corn is ground with a stone mortar. Tortillas are shaped by hand. The taste is different from what machines produce. There is something in the handmade version, a human touch. When making tamales, the whole family gathers. They make them together. They share stories. It is not just food. It is a way of preserving culture, a way of keeping identity alive. The world rediscovered the Maya. Ancient sites were excavated. In the 1840s, John Lloyd Stevens and Frederick Catherwood explored Maya ruins. They found cities buried in the jungle. They drew pictures. They kept records. The world was astonished. Such a civilization had existed. Such cities in the Americas. Excavations began. Throughout the 20th century, archaeologists dug through the jungle. Tikal was revealed. Trees were cleared. Soil was removed. Pyramids emerged from the earth. Palenque, Copan, Calakmul, one by one, they were discovered. The decipherment of the writing system also began. For a long time, it was a mystery. No one could read it. In the 1950s, Yuri Knorozov, a Russian scholar, made a breakthrough. He discovered that the glyphs included phonetic signs, that they represented both meaning and sound. In the 1970s, David Stewart, a young scholar, accelerated the decipherment. He first read Maya glyphs at the age of 12. He was a genius. He made many contributions. Now, much of the writing can be read. Over 70% has been deciphered. The history carved in stone came back to life. The names of kings, records of wars, all could be read. We learned who the Maya were, what they believed, how they lived. Museums were built in Guatemala City, in Mexico City. They display Maya artifacts. People come to see them, to see the culture of their ancestors. They feel pride. Our ancestors built these things. Schools teach it now. Maya history. Children learn about it. Identity grows stronger. We are Maya. We have a great past. Rigoberta Menchú, a Maya woman and activist, won the Nobel Peace Prize. During the Guatemalan Civil War, she fought for human rights. She defended the rights of the Maya. She told the world about the suffering of the Maya, about the discrimination that continues. Maya mayors emerged. They participate in politics. They speak up for themselves. In 2012, there was great attention. Because of the Maya calendar, a cycle of the long count was ending that year. For the first time in 5,125 years, rumors spread that the world would end, that the Maya had predicted it. Of course, it was false. The Maya calendar simply began a new cycle. Maya elders explained this. It was not the end, but a new beginning. But thanks to this, the world paid attention to the Maya. Today, the Maya are a living culture, not relics in a museum. On the streets, in the markets, you can hear Maya languages in the fields. In the traditional way, they plant corn. The temples are gone, but the beliefs remain. Changed in form, but continued. Past and present, breathe together. 5,000 years of history continues today. Rest well tonight. The story of Maya civilization ends here. Tonight, fall into deep sleep. Thank you.